Hare Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Guru Namaha Hari Om Tat. So we have already discussed the three Mahavakyas, which is in a way the summary of whole of Vedanta philosophy. The first Mahavakya was the first Prajnanam Brahma from Rig Veda. Then we discussed Aham Brahmasmi from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Then we discussed Tattvamasi, that the little individual and the consciousness therein and the universal consciousness are essentially one. There's no distinction, there is no difference. We'll discuss that. And today we will conclude this discussion of Mahavakyas by discussing a very famous and a very powerful, very insightful Mahavakya called Ayam Atma Brahma, which appears in the Mandukya Upanishad in the Atharva Veda. Now, this is the final Mahavakya, the four Mahavakyas. Depending on different Vedantic traditions, a few other statements are also considered Mahavakyas by certain commentators. We are not getting into that. Ayam Atma Brahma iti Mahavakyartha Vicharaha. Now look at the word, what he writes. Mahavakyartha Vicharaha. It's not about a literary commentary on Mahavakya as such, but what are these sentences? What is the purpose of this Vichara Vakyartha Bodha? We need to have some understanding, inner understanding of what it is. Anantaram Atharvanikam Ayam Atma Brahma iti Kramapraptam Turiyam Mahavakyam Vibrunoti. Anantaram, after this, Atharvanikam, which is there in the Atharva Upanishad. What is that sentence? Ayam Atma Brahma iti Kramapraptam. This comes in the number 4. You have the Rig Veda, and then you have Yajur Veda, then Sam Veda, and finally you have the Athar Veda. In serial number 4 it is coming. Turiyam. Turiyam means Chaturtha. Chaturiyam Mahavakyam Vibrunoti. He is explaining. Atma Upalabdhi Sadhanatvene. And why should we read it? What is the purpose? What do we get out of it? Atma Upalabdhi Sadhanati. So we are doing Sravana Manana Nididhyasana. We are interested. So it is important that we find out what are the means for this Atmajnana. There was the story I mentioned when we were doing the Pita Putra Sambhada in the Chandogya Upanishad in the Sashta Adhyaya, Svetaketu and Uddalaka Aruni. There was a story he mentioned how a person who was tied up, his hands and legs, and then people had put some cloth or something on the mouth so that he cannot speak, and they robbed him, took away everything. He was lying there. He was making suppressed noises to draw others' attention, and then there was a very compassionate, kind person who comes and releases him. Then he asks, "What do you want?" He says, "I am from Gandhar." He's a person from Afghanistan. He's somewhere in the middle of India. This particular compassionate person tells that you have to go in the northwesterly direction. Then he takes advice from several other people and he reaches there. That is the role of the Guru or the Acharya. Therefore, what he's saying, Atma Upalabdhi Sadhanatvena. So what is the sadhana? That it's in the northwestern direction you go. Similarly, these Mahavakyas are sending us into a process of meditation where we have Jiva Eka, Jiva Brahma Ekatva Jnana. We need to have that. Therefore, they are advising us. Ninnayasya Omkarasya Shrestya Kathanaya. This is from the Manduka Upanishad, where there is vichara of what is this Omkara. We would go into that. Shrestya Kathanaya. And that it is supreme, that Omkara. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says, the person who sort of meditates on this Omkara. If you look at the Yoga Sutras, Ishvara Pranidhanadva, that is saying, Yoga Chittavritti Nirodha Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tam Nirodha. What are the Chittavrittis they would mention? Pramana, Viparya, Vikalapa, Smriti, Nidra, and then all these difficulties to realize it. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Desha, Avinivesha, all the classes. And finally, he says you have to do a series of exercises to purify your consciousness. Then you can get into the dhyana mode, the real samadhi mode. And there he says, Ishvara Pranidhana Dva. It's also possible provided you have complete surrender to Ishvara. Divine grace also plays an important role. So somebody will say, is it going to any temple? Yoga Sutra is not mentioning. That Rathatra is there, so you go to Jagannath Ji, or you go to Kali temple. No. He says, Tasya Vachakaha Pranavaha. This whole game is about meditation. So there would be some upasana, but that upasana will not be in contradiction with the general trend of advice in that text. Therefore, he said, Tasya Vachaka Pranavaha. And same thing has been taken up in the commentary by Madhusudana Saraswati, and we have read them. So he says how it's very important. Bhagavan also advises that Omkara is not Brahman, but this is a means when you meditate on it. That's a symbolic representative of Brahman. Omkara is equal to Brahman. No. Omkara is a means to meditate on something in order to realize the vastness, the pure, truth, consciousness, bliss nature of reality, which we are. But we are trapped in this body-mind complex and we confuse ourselves as limited, as temporary, as sad, as happy. All kinds of things happen in our minds. So, Nirnayasya, what we are trying to determine, Nirnayasya Omkarasya. So, in the Mandukya Upanishad, there is Vichara and the Omkara. Seshtya Kathanaya Prabhritaya Mandukya Srutyam Ditya Mantre Suyate Idam Vakyam. Ayam Atma Vakya is mentioned in that I have quoted, I have inserted it here. Tatra Adu Ayam Savdartham Achaste. Ayam Atma Brahma. What is the sentence there? He says there, Sarvam hi etad Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma, Saha Ayam Atma Chatuspat. And we will have a discussion about what is this four-peated thing. What is this four-footed thing called Brahman? It's not having any physical being, or something is having a physical structure. So what do you mean by four-footed Brahman? No, it's very deeply symbolic. We'll get into that. So Sarvam hi etad Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma. Sarvam hi, look at the way this language in this whole thing is being framed. Sarvam, that means all, hi etad Brahma. Everything you say is verily this Brahma. So there is a direction where you are referring to something which is not you. Sarvahi etad Brahma. All these are thieves, all these are monks, all these are politicians, not you. Then he says, Brahma. Then he says, I am Atma, and this, I am Atma. Then he would put the finger on the chest and says, I am, not others, but I am. I am Atma Brahma. Everything you see is Brahman. When you say everything, you're included. And then I am. Then he specifically mentions this self-aware consciousness with which you are discussing everything is Brahman, and you are that Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, you discuss in a particular way. I am Atma Brahman. So, it's from the macro to the micro. And then it's not a relationship between macro and micro. It's in fact taking the consciousness away from this macro-micro thing in order to establish it in that universal truth consciousness. It's no more a temptation to equate the micro with the macro. Therefore, he's saying, Saha ayam atma chatuspat. And then he says, a little, what is this? What are these four levels in which you can meditate on it? We will go into that. We'll in fact try to see that page in the Upanishad. But we can do it first, we can do it later on. There are two ways to do it. Okay, I got no problem. I can change the page I'm sharing and I'll come back. So I'll go there and I'll unshare it, and then I will share that Upanishad page. Yeah. And then we'll look at it and we'll come back. Now, this is the Sringeri page. It's available to all of you. advaitasarada.sringeri.net. It's all in Sanskrit, but there is also another website where all the Advaita Vedanta texts are available in PDF. I can share the links with you. Now, if you look at it, there are only few mantras in Mandukya Upanishad, the shortest. It becomes very profound because of the Gaudapada Karikas. He has written a poetry commentary on it, and then you have Shankaracharya. So, therefore, people say if you can master Mandukya Karika, the Mandukya Upanishad, you know everything. Om iti etada aksharam idam sarvam. This is the first sentence. Tasya upakyanam bhutam bhavad bhavishyat iti sarvam onkara eva. Everything is onkara. Remember that there is a representational thing that we're using as onkara to describe this whole diverse reality. So how can you graduate from the diverse, universal, vast thing to suddenly one unified consciousness? In between, you have a mediating level called Omkara so that you can meditate on it. Yacha anya trikalatitam yad api Omkara eva. Okay, I'm not getting into the details because Om iti etat, if you remember, we had I think another group. I had this Upanishad with the students. So Nachiketa is being advised by Yamaraj. How do I meditate on that Atma? He says, Om iti etat. Few mantras he says. Etad alambanam. That is what you use. Etad ve satyakama paramcha brahma yad onkaraha. In Prashna Upanishad, the same thing comes. Etad ve satyakama paramcha. It's, it's very subtle, as well as there is a bit of it is without name and form and is some kind of a representation thing, which is apara and para both. Similarly, Om iti Brahma is there in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Omkara eva idam sarvam, that is in Chandogya Upanishad. And therefore, in the Chandogya Upanishad, the father is advising the son, Sadeva Swamya idamagra asid ekam eva advitiyam. Then he says, knowing what you can know everything, he says, Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mritika ityevam satyam. Clay alone is real. The pots and different kinds of names and forms, Kataka Kundaladi, gold alone is real. The names and forms you give, this is an armlet, this is a necklace, this is something you wear on the head, on the nose pin. You cannot buy any of these without buying gold. They have no existence other than gold. The sansara, all of us have no existence without that Brahman. Sarva hi, then this whole sentence, Sarvam hi etad Brahma, ayam Atma Brahma, Saha ayam Atma Chatuspat. And what is this? I will not get into the long details, but there are these three levels. One is the Sthula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, and the Karana Sharira. Then Avasthatira Shakshi Panchokoshatita. Beyond these three, Avasthatira Shakshi, that pure consciousness, that is the fourth one. Therefore, he says, Jagarita Sthana Vahi Pragyaha Saptanga Ekonovinsati Mukhaha Stula Vuk Vaishwanaraha Prathama Padaha. You have Vishwa at the micro level, it's called Vaishwanar or Virat. At the Samasti or the macro level, Jagarita Sthana is the waking state. And what is the definition for the waking state? Wherever there is a relationship, you're able to establish it between your Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas and the external reality. That's Jagarita Avastha. Your external senses are active and your Sthula Deha, with which you do a lot of things. Jagarita Avastha. Therefore, it's called Bahi Prajna. Your consciousness is outwardly oriented. Physics, chemistry, football, stock market, war, everything, you're interacting with it. Swapnasthano antaha prajna saptanga ekonovinsati mukhaha pravivikta Bhukti Jaso Ditya Padha. Remember one thing, this is the Shukshma Sarira which is active, where you have this Pancha Karmendriyas and Jnanendriyas. This is the Linga Sharira. You see, you can refer to the Sukshma Sharira. So you have, what do you have there? So Manabuddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, these four, plus you have Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, and Pancha Prana, 19 elements. Eko Unavinsati Mukha. And that is what is the Antarpragya, internally oriented. You can create dreams, you see dreams. That reality is you only. If you are playing football and there is a referee and there was a conflict and there was law and order situation, the police comes in. Who is the police? You. Who calls the police? It's you. Who is playing football? It's you. Who is the audience? It's you. It's all your creation. Antapragya. Because of lack of time, we are not getting into it, because our purpose is to actually discuss the Panchadasi. Yatra supta na kashana kamam kamayate na kashana swapnam pashyati. You do not do anything. You don't aspire for anything. You don't see any dreams. Tat susuptam. That is the deep sleep state. Susuptasana eki bhutah prajnanaganaha eva anandamayo. That is the anandamayo kosha. First, you have the Swapnavastha and Jagratavastha. You have Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha, both active. And you have the Pranamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha activity in Jagratavastha. You're in the sleep state. In a way, even the Pancha Pranas and Pancha Pranas plus Pancha Karmendriyas, they are not very active in the dream state, but they're very active in the Manomaya and Vijnanamaya. Sometimes you have some rationality even in dreams, isn't it? You are also deciding. So mostly it's a game of the Manomaya Kosha. You have vasanas, sanskaras, and then some judgment which is there in your subconscious. You apply it. Sustupstana eki bhutah prajnanagana eva anandamaya. So this is the Karana Sarira. Anandamaya is not full of bliss. That is discussed in the Brahma Sutras. It is prachuryarthe mayat pratyaya. Ananda means full of bliss, not in that sense. So that particular thing, because there is a better reflection of Brahmananda, because your consciousness is clean, you're in deep sleep, therefore it's called Anandamaya Kosha. He Ananda Vuk Cheto Mukha Pragya Tritiya. That's Prakarshana and Agya, Pragya. Therefore, that is referred to as Pragya. So you have Vishwa, waking state, Virat or Vaishwanara, Samasti. You have Taijasa here, and you are creating things. Similarly, at Samasti, it's a Hiranyagarbha. He also just Sankalpa Atmaga Srishti he does. That is what is real for us. Then you go up, it's Prajya here, the Karanavastha, and there you have Ishvara. Yeah, so these three levels. And then ultimately you have the fourth state, that is the Suddha Brahma. Beyond the Karana Sarira. Karana Sarira is that platform where you have the Sukshma Sarira and Sthula Sarira. Both are in a seed form. Like your computer fold, you fold it up, the programs as well as folders. All of it, they get closed, they get into a sleep mode. When you open the computer, everything comes alive. So, pragyanani ghanibhutani iva sa ayam avastha avivega rupatvat pragyanaghana uchyate. Aviveka rupatva. There is no viveka, there is no vichara. Vijnanamaya Kosha is asleep. Yatha ratrau. Then I will not get into it because we have limited time here. Eso asya parama ananda in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. We are trying to go to that seventh mantra where we'll see. Esa sarveshwara, esa sarvagyo, esho antaryame, esa yonihi sarvasya prabhavapyavu srishti and pralaya. And that is the foundation, he's saying. Sarveshwara, adhidevikasya, bheda jnanasya, sarvasya ishwaraha isita. Then what he mentions that, ateva eshantaryami. And then these are the karikas where beautifully he's, these are couplets he's writing. Bahi pragyo vibhur vishwo hyanta pragyastu tejasaha. Vibhu vishwa, the same thing. Ghana pragyas tatha pragya eka eva tridhastitaha. All these three states are one thing only. And then finally he goes to that ultimate thing in the seventh sloka, which should be the point of our focus when we go to the eighth number, eighth number, in the sloka in the Panchadashi 5th chapter. And how is he referring to him? Nanta pragyam, na vahir pragyam, na ubhayatah pragyam, na pragyanaghanam, na pragyam, na apragyam, adrishyam, avyavaharyam, agrahyam, agrahyam, alakshanam, achintyam, avyavadesyam, एकात्म प्रत्यय सारम प्रपंचोपशमम शांतम शिवम अद्वैतम चतुर्थम मन्यन्ते स आत्मा स विज्ञेयः. Because it's not physically available, it's not indriya gochara. That atma is not indriya gochara. We will discuss how it is for prakasha, therefore it is aparoksha, and yet it's not available to the indriyas. It's not a mediated reality that you are going to just read and understand. But reading and meditating on it, these are certain handles to solve the problem, to meditate on it. And look at these words. When we go to the 8th mantra, I'll come back to this. It's not antapragya because it's not the swapnavastha. Na vahipragya is not jagrata avastha. Na ubhayatah pragyam. Na pragyanaghanam, not the karanavastha. Na pragyam, na apragyam. You don't, because you see, these are, in a way, we are refuting neti approach we are doing. Adrishyam, not visible to the eyes or any of your interests. Avyavaharyam, there is no arthakriyavatvam, that there is something and you can use it like clay, you can have a pot, you can you invest, you get some profit, nothing of that sort. Avyavaharyam, agrahyam, it's not indriya grahya, you cannot know it, it's not an object of your knowing. You can remove ignorance, then it becomes self-evident, but it's not a subject matter for study. We are doing this study in order to enable the mind to think more clearly so that it drops all thinking. Alaksham. Why alakshanam? There is no definition. We talk about Swarupa Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana, and yet he's saying alakshanam. And then achintyam. There is no way you can comprehend it. Abhyapadesham. Then why do have Vedanta, this whole parampara? He's saying, no, you cannot advise what it is. This is not a thing we can be easily either understood or can be advised or can be practiced or could be internalized. And therefore he's saying ekatma pratyashara. So it doesn't exist. No. Ekatma pratyashara. You still have that upalabdhi, that realization in the oneness. Prapancho upasamam. And then this whole sansara loses its grip over you. It's not destruction of the reality around us. Prapancha upasamam shantam shivam. Shivam here is auspicious. Peace and auspicious. Advaitam chaturtham manyante sa atma savijñeha. So all these questions we are asking, we have a lot of logical challenges, a lot of conflicts with people, but when we have that, we become kritakritya. We have niratisaya ananda. There is nothing more that we have to look for. So this is the chatuspath, that is the word. Now we'll definitely come back to where we started. We'll come back to our text. So I'll come back to the Kalyana Piyusha Vakya. Okay. Now here, how does he describe it? Ayam iti vivakshita artha pratipattaye. Ayam. What is vivakshita? What is being said? What the author intends to say. In order to understand, in order for us to have a good understanding of it, jnaninam hrit pandirika eva upalabhyatvad angulyaha. Now there is anguli nirdesha. They say, if you talk to some mentors and coaches, and they will say how to do communication. They will say, if you're talking about yourself, don't say I. You say, you have to do this, and it's very important. Then you're pushing your hand on your chest. You're creating an impact. He realizes that you are very honest, you are very sincere. So you're touching your heart 3-4 times. Now the Vedanti does it. I'm not speaking in the air. He's saying, Jnaninam Shrutprandarike eva upalabdhatvad. Not in words, not in the mind, but in the heart, in the sense what? In their consciousness, inner consciousness. Angulyaha hridaya desha anayana purvakam abhinayena uktitaha. There's a lot of interesting pedagogy right now going on, what is called embodied pedagogy. So it's not only linguistic, or it's not logocentric, it's not only cognitive, but it's embodied in sense. So if you see how somebody learns a particular dance form, how somebody learns how to paint, how do you do some experiments, these are all embodied modes of learning, because the whole body, mind, everything, they have to be put into application. So you cannot read a book on dance and learn to dance unless you go to a teacher. So here that embodied interest comes, that the teacher is not about reading. Stravana is considered to be very, very important, because there your ego kind of is held in check and you're listening. So you're attentive. Whole body mind complex of yours is kind of tuned to that truth. Therefore, a lot of Vedanta acharyas who have said it's no, by reading you can't get a hang of it. You need to do satsang where you are listening to somebody, because that comes through the parampara. And the teacher here puts his, his fingers on his chest and says, I am Atma Brahma. He doesn't say I am Brahman, he says I am Atma. By saying I am, he is including all, but at the same time, he is hinting at the intimacy, the immediacy of that experience, that realization. Uktitaha darshana purvakam kathanena. That is how it's being saying. Darshana purvakam kathanena. You are seeing the abhinaya and then you are also listening to the words. Swayam prakasa aparokhyatvam. Two words there. Swayam prakasha, that means, like for example, a physical object you see with physical light. Here is not a physical object. The light of consciousness with which, and the consciousness is such, it doesn't need another consciousness to be evident. Swayam prakasha aparokhyatvam. That means non-mediated realization. Swaprakasena aparokhyatvam pratyag atmanaha matam abhimatam. Swaprakashena is self-luminous, and then it's immediately known to you. Pratyag atmanaha matam abhimatam. Etena atma aparoksha, and that's how the atma is aparoksha, that means available for your realization. However, akshanam agocharaha cha iti suchitaha. You can realize the atma, but if somebody says, show me, if you have realized atma really, and where is it? You'll say, I have realized it. Where? Can you show me? Can you tell me about his size and shape? Is it 6 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet? No, you say, no, it's not like that. Akshanam agocharaha. Agochar means not Vishaya. That Atma is not an object of your cognitive engagement. It's not Jnana Vishaya. If Jnana is knowledge in the Western sense, Atma is beyond that knowledge. However, if Atma means pure consciousness, self-luminosity, then Atma Jnana is possible. Therefore, now sublation problem will not be there, because for sublation, you have to have an object outside of you, which can be denied with some methodology. But here, all methodology becomes superfluous, because your pure consciousness becomes overwhelmingly present and you don't need any proof once you are there. So prakasaha ata eva hrit pundarike, here in the Hridaya Kamala, bhanad aparokshaha, because that appears here, not anywhere else. Swayam anubhuti twad. How do you do it? Because you have the experience of it yourself. Anubhuti twad ghadadivat indriya janya jnana vishaya. Like you have pen and pencil and book and computer, the laptop screen I'm looking at. It's not like that. So, indriya janya jnana avishaya. It's not the Vishaya object of Indriya Janya Jnana. Why he's saying this is very important. Because for Pratyaksha, for the Nyayayikas, who are the Indian realists, they believe in the supremacy of sense perception. So anything which is Indriya Janyatva is a Prayojaka of Pratyaksha Jnana for them. You can know something, you can say it's Pratyaksha, directly you're seeing it, sense perception, then there has to be Indriya Janyatva. And for them, Manas is also an Indriya. For us, Manas is not an Indriya, it's Antakarana, and it undergoes modifications. Therefore, you say the Pramana Chaitanya You have Pramatri Chaitanya and you have Vishaya Chaitanya. Everything is consciousness. When the Pramatri Chaitanya traveling through the Indriyas, the Vrityavachinna Chaitanya or the modal consciousness envelops the object of knowing, and it becomes that Ghatakara, that Vishayakara Chaitanya becomes Eka. Then that becomes Abhinna from the Pramatri Chaitanya. Then the circle is complete and Pratyaksha Jnana happens. Not because any Indriya is just a means, the gates through which Antakarnavritti travels outwards. And sometimes it goes inwards when you have Sukha Dukkha Upalabdhi. These are the Vedantic cognitive science. How that happens. How do you achieve any knowledge? Swayam Anubhuti Twad Ghadadevad Indriya Janya Jnana Avishaya Ataha Eva Agocharaha. It's not the Vishaya. Whatever is Gochara is Vishaya. Whatever is not Gochara, you cannot know it. Now here, there is a bit of Sankara Bhashya, and I will mention it, but I'm just touching upon it. Why he's saying this? Swayam Prakasa, Swaprakasha Aparokhyatvam Ayam iti Yuktitaha Matam. With logic, this is explained to us. Okay. Now, Ayam Atma Brahma, of the whole sentence, Shankaracharya in this Mandukya Upanishad has given an introduction. We can just quickly look at it and then move forward. Avidhana avidheyoyor ekatvepi avidhana pradhanyena nirdeshaha. The first thing, Ayam Atma Brahma. What is avidhana? There is something called avidha vritti, naming exercise. You use a name, there is a pada padartha sambandha. There is a word and what is referred by that word. That word is called avidhana. What is being referred to? Avidheya. So avidhana, avidheya. In order to give importance to the word, Ayam Atma is the avidheya, Brahman. Sometimes that is the avidheya, this is the avidhana. They are referring to each other. Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam. That Om is that avidhana. The word is being used to explain the whole world. Avidhana pradhanyena nirdishtasya punaha avideya pradhanyena nirdeshaha avidhana avideyayor ekatva pratipatyartham. This whole world is Omkara. What is being referred to? This whole world. What is the word you're using? Omkara. Itaratha hi avidhana tantra avideya pratiprattir iti avideyasya avidhanatvam. The avideya becomes avidhana. Gaunamiti asankasyat. Some logical questions. I'm not getting into the details of it. It's of no much interest right now. Just remember this thing he's focusing on. Ekatva pratipattesya prayojanam avidhana avideyayoho. Ekatva, that you have to understand. There we understood that tattvamasi jiva brahmaiva naparaha. Similarly here, I am Atma Brahma is essentially hitting at one thing, that you are referring to is this consciousness. Ekan eva prayatnena yugapat prabilapayangs tad vilakshanam brahma pratipadyate iti. So I am Atma Brahma. I am Atma. Then he brings in that word Brahman, which is completely different. This is the Atma and this is verily Brahman. Brahma pratipadyate tathacha vakhyati, and then he says pada matra matrasya pada. So Omkara, you have these Chatur matras, Ardha matras, Tita Devi, the Chandi part we do. So O, U, Mo, these are the four-footed Brahman, Chatuspad Brahma. This is how it is. And the last one is, they give the example, you ring a bell, when the sound stops, there is this ringing thing, like you have this Buddhist thing. Yeah, you have this Buddhist thing, the baul sound, baul music, they just rub it. It goes. It has no physical presence, but it rings in your consciousness. Therefore, he's saying pada matra matrasya padaha iti tadaha sarvam hi etad brahma iti sarvam yad uktam omkara matramiti. That everything is verily omkara. Tad etad brahma. Tatcha brahma paroksha avitam. That Brahma is paroksha, because we are talking about something external. Brahma is not me. Paroksha avitam prathakyatah visheshanam nirdisati. But then you are adding two more words saying ayam atma. This is Brahman, Omkara. And that Omkara Brahma, you know what? Ayam atma. So you are adding these words. Ayam atma Brahma iti. Ayam iti chatuspatvena pravividyamanam pratyak atmataya avinayena. He says, Ayam atma Brahma. Nirdisati ayam atma iti. So ayam atma Omkara avideyaha. Omkara is that avidhana. Omkarena avideyaha. It's referred to that. That Brahman is referred to with the word Omkara. Paraparatvena vyavastitaha chatuspat karshapanavat na gauriva. So this four-footed we are referring is not like it's a cow, it has 4 feet. Trayanam Vishwadinam, you have this, Jagrata Sopna and Sushupti Avastha, and then the fourth one. Turyasya, the fourth one, Pratipatti iti, Karna sadhanaha pada sabdaha, Trutiyasya tu upadyate iti, Karma sadhanaha pada sabdaha. Okay, so now we are not getting into it. Turyasya tu padyate iti, Karma sadhanaha. You see, you meditate on all that, and finally you reach at that supreme consciousness. Okay, so this is a very beautiful way in which Bhagavan Sankaracharya elaborates, but we have a challenge before us. We have to finish these 2 slokas of this chapter, and we can do Mandukya Upanishad later on. Anandaram Apta Sabdartham, Anandaram Atma Sabdartham Aha. So first you said I am Atma Brahma. I am Atma, we understood. Okay, but tell me, what is Atma now? Ahamiti. Then he's saying, Ahankaradi dehantad pratyak atmeti giyate. I am Atma Brahma. Tell me, what is that Atma? He's saying, starting with Ahankara, then you have Buddhi, then you have Manas, Chitta, all that. You also have this Sthula Sarira. Sukshma Sarira, Sthula Sarira, you have the Indriyas and everything. All this, and finally the underlying consciousness, the Shakshi Chaitanya, the witness self. That is what being referred to as Atma. So you have these Panchakoshas, but that which is beyond these Panchakoshas. Therefore he says, Ahankaradi dehantad ahankaraha kratuttvabhimanaha. A lot of commentators, say, why did he mention ahankara first? Do you know which is the biggest hurdle for self-consciousness? The biggest hurdle is in fact our ego. Long back, you might find it very interesting. It was very popular in the States in the 60s and the 70s. There is a book by Carlos Castaneda who experimented with few intoxicants, but he was very popular with hippies and a lot of American university students and other people. The name of the book is The Art of Living, Art of Dreaming. A beautiful book where he is giving you some tricks as to how to work with your own subconsciousness. And there is a guy called, I think, I'm forgetting his name. He's called Casanova or something. There's a character, and then his guru, yeah, the someone is advising him. You have to see your own hand in the dream. So you have to sort of graduate from your conscious level consciousness to the subconscious level consciousness, and both are working. That works during the dream state, and you want to use your dream state, the art of dreaming, in order to guide your waking state. And what he advises, he says, now you have to willfully see a dream. Then you can carry the mechanisms, the wisdom, whatever is available with you during the waking state into your subconscious. Then that is more powerful when it comes to influence. Therefore, you can come back, and he says, can you see your own hand in the dream? That is the exercise. He says, how do I do it? But there's one sentence which stuck with me. He says, if you want to get into this business of occult sciences, of self-realization, the first stage is in fact your ability to lose the sense of self-importance. If we have that sense of self-importance, then great things cannot happen through us, because that's the biggest mental block, ahankara. And therefore, some of the commentators and pravachakas, the preachers who talk about the Upanishad, They believe that this ahankara, starting with ahankara, then you add all that, yeah? The indriyas and the pranas, pancha pranas, karmendriyas, the stula sarira, annamaya kosha, everything. Ahankaradi dehantat. At the bottom is the deha. Because actually, you remember when we did the previous chapter, what are the biggest threat to us? Jiva Srishti. And then Dvaita is, Sastriya Dvaita, Asastriya Dvaita. The biggest threat is not Ishvara Srishti. Sarira comes in Ishvara Srishti or Jiva Srishti. No, it's Ishvara Srishti. We have not decided what kind of a body we want to have. We were just given this. It's not a threat to our sadhana. We might invent reasons as to why we are not succeeding, but the real threat to our sadhana, the real obstacle is posed by our mind. Because there is where we are in fact trying to design the world with our sanskaras and our cravings. Jiva Srishti, the biggest threat. Therefore, he's saying ahankaradi dehantat ultimately goes to the physical body. Pratyag Atma iti giyate. This is what is referred to as Pratyag Atma. You have the Paramatma, here is the Pratyag Atma. You have the Ghatakasha. He will say all that as we move forward. Now, let's look at it. Ahankaradi dehantad ahankaraha kartitva abhimanaha. What is this ahankara? That sense of agency, I'm doing, karta bhukta buddhi, kartutva abhimanaha, tad adi dehantaha, starting with ahankara, is going downwards, till the physical body, which doesn't have any desire of his own, very minor. Dehantaha, dehendriya mana buddhi sangataha, the body mind complex. Karya karana sanghataha, karya is the sarira, karana is the sense organs we have, everything. Tasmad pratyag Antaro ahankaradi adhishthanadeya sakshiteya tasthitah. What is that pratyagatma? So pratyag, which is very close. Pratyag means which is intimate. Parag is distant. So pratyag antara, which is inside. Ahankaradi, starting with your ego sense. Adhishthanadeya. What is the platform on which your ego self, your indriyas, everything are working? What is that? Kutastha, that particular thing which doesn't undergo any vikara, sakshitaya, which is the witness self, chastitaha, sa atma iti giyate. That is what is being referred to as atma, atma sabdena pratipadyate. That is what is referred to as atma. Can you explain that a little more to me? The teacher says yes. What is it? Stula shikshma karana sarira adhishthanatvena. That atma is what? We said that Chatuspad Brahma, right? So you have the Bahiprajna, Sthula, Shikshma, then you have the Antaprajna and Karana, that is Prajna, Sarira Adhishthanatvena, which is the foundation for all this, Yah Sakshi Hridi Prakasate Sa Atma iti Bhavaha. That which is there in my heart, because the heart is part of the Sthula Sharira. We are not referring to the physical heart, but we are talking about the heart of the consciousness that we discover, we describe, we understand, we feel is our self. Then he's saying, I am Atma, we have done. I am Atma, and the meaning of Atma we have done. Now we have to discuss what is the meaning of Brahma. I am Atma Brahma, then totally what is the meaning of this sentence. Therefore he's saying, Drishyamanasya sarvasya, Drishyamanasya sarvasya, Jagatastattvamiryate, Brahma sabdena tad Brahma, so prakasatma rupakam, Drishyamanasya sarvasya, sarvasya drishyamanasya. All that is visible around you, either to your physical eyes or through the tools you are using. Drishyamanasya sarvasya jagataha. Whatever is playing out around you, the lila. Tattvam iryate. What is tattvam? The foundation, the adhisthana. At the pratyagatma level, we again said the foundation on which you have the ahankar and everything else is playing out similarly. This whole diverse world that we see, there is one underlying conscious reality. Tattvam, that. Tat is that, we discussed that in the Tattvamasi. Tat means Vachyartha is Ishvara and the Lakshyartha is that Paramatma. Suddha Atma. Here, Tattvam, Jagataha Tattvam. That means Jagataha, that the way it plays out is not Tat. The real Tattva of the Jagat is what we cannot see and what remains as the underlying reality which holds it, which supports it. It's never affected by it. And then how do you describe? Do you have a word for that? He's saying, yes, I have. Brahma Savadena Tad Brahma. Tad, that is Tattvam. Tad, again he's saying, Tad Brahma, this neutral gender. The Brahma is without male or female gender. Yeah, actually it doesn't have male or female gender. And I have mentioned that before, whether God is a woman or a man. You know, there's a beautiful story where there was this half-educated Brahmin whose wife forced him to go and join one Chandi Patha. And this guy had absolutely no exposure. But because the wife is pressing and he'll get some dakshina, he went there and sat there. And he says, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Sakti Rupana Sangsitaha Namastasya Tasmai. In Strilinga, it's Tasyai. Namastasmai, Namastasmai. Then the head priest came and kicked him out of that mandapam. Where did you come? Where did you learn your Sanskrit? Get out of this place. This place isn't meant for you. He comes back embarrassed, humiliated, hungry, with empty stomach. He comes and sleeps. And wife says, did you have food? He says, yes. And he says, because of you, I was humiliated before a lot of people. Wife is hungry, he's hungry, both drink a little water, and then they lie on the mat. And then what happens is the story is unfolding elsewhere. The head priest goes to sleep after a sumptuous meal. Then suddenly in the dream, he finds himself engulfed by grand luminous reality around him. And he's hearing one question. Tasyai tasmaiva. Now tell me, you want to refer to me as tasyai or tasmai? How do you want to address me? As male or female? The supreme consciousness is beyond male and female. It's pure consciousness. It doesn't have a physical form. It's desha kala vastu parisheda sunyam, and this priest wakes up and realizes the great mistake he has done. It runs to that poor Brahmin's house and he's scared. This guy has come back to kick me again. He apologizes to him. He says, I'm sorry. The supreme is neither male nor female. Tasmai is right, Tasya is right. I was stupid. I misbehaved with you, please. So here, therefore, he's saying, Tad Brahma, Brahma Savadena, Tad Brahma, So Prakasatma Rupakam. The total thing is now giving us the Vakyartha. That Jiva Brahma Aikya, Pratyagatma Paramatma Aikya Bodha. He's giving So Prakasa Atma Rupakam. So Prakasa, self-luminous, and it's verily Ayam Atma Brahma, therefore Atma Rupakam. Now let's look at the commentary, finish it, and then with little time we can look at other aspects. Rajju Sarpadivada. Now you have the snake, but actually the platform is the rope. Rajju Sarpadivat. There is something called Rajju Sarpa. It's not a snake. It's a rope snake. The Jagat is the Brahman appearing as Jagat. Rajju Sarpadivat. Drishyamanasya Maya Kalpitasya. This is all Kalpita, imagined because of Maya, because there is a kind of inversion happening. Ataha eva mithya rupasya akasadehe. This Panchabhuta, sky and everything, he's saying these are all false. Not false like Tucha, Sasavishana, the rabbit's horns, or Bandhyaputra, a barren lady's son. It's not like that. It's Vyavaharika Satya, which will be ultimately sublated in the Paramarthika Satya. Mithya rupasya akasadehe sarvasya jagataha tattvam. What is the fundamental reality? It's mithya means what? It's not trikala vadhya. Okay? So it's trikala badhya. Natu trikala vadhyatva is not there. Jagataha tattvam yathartha swarupam adhishtanam. Tattva means what? Yathartha swarupam. The real, the essential nature of it, which is the foundation. Mahavakyagata Brahma Sabdena Iryate Kathyate. So that is Ayam Atma Brahma. So in that Mahavakya, the Brahma Sabda is referring to the foundational, essential reality which holds this whole vast, diverse reality we describe as samsara. Evam padartha muktva, having said the padartha of Brahma, vakyartham darshayati. What is the sentence meaning totally? I am Atma Brahma. Taditi, tad Brahma. I am Atma, tad Brahma. Atra tat savdena Atma paramashyate. Tad means that. First he says, I am Atma. I am is this. Then it's tad Brahma. Because by Brahma you think it's too vast, it's different from you. No, tat sabdena atma paramrishyate. Then for napunsaka nirdeshastu tad Brahma, they are both neutral gender. Brahma savada samanadhikaranyat. What is samanadhikaranya? We had discussed yesterday. So the basic meaning of it is that eka vibhakti. You have that same case which is being used. Yeah. And then because of samana vibhakti antayoho, vibhakti anta means the prathama ekavachana, ditya ekavachana, tad brahma, prathama ekavachana in both the cases. Samana vibhakti antayoho padayor, there are two words, tad and brahma. Tad is prathama ekavachana, brahma is prathama ekavachana. Arthayor ekasmin arthe tatparyam. They are both referring to one artha. Therefore, that is samanadhikaranya. And what we did, bhinna pravritti nimittayoho, tat and tvam are different. Bhinna pravritti nimittayoho sabdayor ekasmin arthe pravrittihi samanadhikaranyam. So, I am Atma, something which is very intimate, dear, very close to you. Tad Brahma. And then samanadhikaranya, he is saying both are neutral gender, prathama vachana is given because in order to establish that they are both pointing at the same thing, and which is that aikya. Okay, jiva brahma aikya. Let's come back to okay, I have to. So therefore, vakyartham. So samanadhikaranyena through the samanadhikaranya anvayavalad brahmat manor aikyam avagamyate. Atma, you're referring to this Sukshma, Stula, Adi, and the foundation thereof, Pratyek Atma. And then Brahma, you are saying the Sansara, Adhisthana, but they are verily one. Evam cha Brahmatmekyam Vakyartha iti Phalitam. So, what is the outcome of this long discussion? Jiva Brahma, Pratyek Atma, Paramatma is verily one. Aikya Nishaye, when you have confirmed understanding without any doubt, without any apprehension, aikya nishye hetum visheshana mukhena visadayati. And why I am Atma Brahma? He's saying, giving two adjectives. Swaprakasha Atma Rupakam iti. That Brahman is Swaprakasha Atma Rupakam. That Brahma is not different from us. It's self-luminous, therefore you don't need indriyas to see it. And then it's Atma Rupakam, not different from you. It's not Indriya Grahya and it's not different from you. So you can have Apuroksha Sakshatkara. Padadvaya Pratipadyarthasya Shoprakasa Atma Rupakatva Avishesad Aikyam Sustam. Now, how do you establish that verily one? I am Atma Brahma. Okay, these are two words you are saying. However, Swaprakasa Atma Rupa, these two you are putting together, and Swaprakasa Atma Rupakatva, these are verily referring to the same consciousness. Avishesad. There is no different thing they are trying to mean. Aikyam Sustam, verily nicely established, they are referring to the one and the same thing. That's Sachidananda Swarupa of all of us. Evam Sati Tad Atma Brahma Tacha Swaprakasa Atma Rupakam iti yojana. Therefore, that what we are referring to as Brahman is in fact this particular Brahma. We have 5 minutes and then we would like to sort of bring it to a close. Ayam Atma Brahma, Soyam Atma Chatuspat. We had a look at that. Why this Mahavakya? There are these Vedantic couplets. Sansara Vishavrikshasya Dvefale Amrutopame. The Sansara is a tree of poisonous fruits, but there are two fruits which will give you nectar. Kadachidapi Satsango, sitting with sadhus and acharyas and listening to good things. Mahavakyartha chintanam. These are the two fruits without any poison. The rest of this world is full of poison. And therefore, you have to sort of, if you look at our discussion even earlier, Aham Brahmasmi, Yas Sakshad Aparokshad Brahma Sa Atma Sarvantara. There, Aparokshad is not fifth case, it is Aparoksham. Yat Sakshad, that Atma which is direct, unmediated. Aparokshad means through non mediation, no, not in that sense, which is Aparoksham, direct knowledge, direct perception. Brahma, Yah Atma Sarvantara, which is there in all. Therefore, you know that particular sentence, Antah Sarire Nihito Guhayam, again and again, which is hiding in all of us. And then Atma, you try to remove everything. Yacha apnoti yadadate yacha atti vishayan api, all that, this whole world around us. Yachasya santato bhavas tasmad atmiti kityate. Therefore, this is actually from Linga Puranam, quoted by Shankaracharya in many places. That particular consciousness with which we connect to the external world, we do everything, in which actually doesn't undergo any change. And therefore, that Brahma, we have already, Aham Brahmasmi, we have discussed it. It's brihad, it's vast, infinite. So therefore, it's essentially brihi briddhau, that is the dhatu from here, Brahmapada, we have got it. Yad mahat sarva vyapaka niratisayam, which is sarva vyapakam and niratisayam. There's nothing beyond that. Therefore, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, we equated that while discussing Prajnanam Brahma. So the consciousness aspect was emphasized. And then finally, we did that Tattvamasi, what's called Bhagatyaga Lakshana, Soyam Devadattaha. So the Vishishta, you have the Aparoksha Vishishta Tvampadartha, Paroksha Vishishta Brahma Padartha. Remove this Virudhangsha, which are mutually in contradiction with each other. What remains is that pure consciousness, which will give you Abheda Jnana through the Alakshartha. And therefore, now I will just try to close it with a few Vedantic couplets. Naham deho name prano name buddhir nachendriyam. Neither I am body, if you look at the Nirvana Satakam. Name prana, I'm not my breath, I'm not my intelligence, I'm not my sense organs. Shakshi chidghana ruposmi. I'm that bundle of consciousness. Soyam atma Orobhyaha, and that is the ultimate thing, is abhyaya. It doesn't undergo changes. The body does, the buddhi does. Everything else undergo changes. The consciousness doesn't. Yaha sarva briti shakshi, that which witness all that happens, all the vikaras in me. Shakshishya, Jagrata, Swapna, Susupti. A lot of things happen. A lot of experiences happen during all these three states, including in the deep sleep state. We wake up and says, Aham Sukham Aswapsam Nakinchil Avedisham, means you have experience of a good sleep so that you remember it when you wake up. Avastitopi Nirvikarha Tadeva Brahma Nishchayaha. It's there. Everything is happening around it. It doesn't undergo any change. Ayam Atmeti Yo Bodha Saeva Brahma Darshanam. And then when we are able to realize I am Atma, iti Yaha Bodha, that very realization that we have. Na Bhedo Vidyate Tatra, there is no Bheda, like the Dvaitis, that I am a worshipper of Kali, I am a worshipper of Krishna. Oh, fine, but the sadhana Kala. The ultimate destination is that pure consciousness. Bheda Avidya Krito Mataha. The dualities that we get entangled in is because of ajnana, it's because of incomplete understanding. Permanently, there is no bheda. And that is how this chapter was very beautiful, but we will be now discussing a lot of dualities and different viewpoints about duality in the Chitradeepa Prakarana, which is coming after this. And this is how it comes to an end. And I think we would have our next class on Thursday, because I am going to do a bit of travel. Anyway, we don't have any class, but Thursday in the evening, we will be able to have our class. So until then, we have this Rath Yatra in between, and have a good festive time wherever you are. And we'll come back And thanks, Amita, for reconnecting. And so all of you, and Ajayji is here, actually Ajayji and me, and we are going to another place to see a Rath Yatra in Orissa. We'll be back and we'll reconnect. And thank you for joining. So if you have any questions, you can ask one or two. I'll be putting it into the, yeah, please feel free to ask the questions.
Swamiji.